Welcome back to the Corp. This week on the Corp, we have two great interviews. Howard Schultz, you know him. He created Starbucks. You're probably drinking a Starbucks right now. So a couple things I want to get to here, Arod. One, this was the first time that you allowed Hank and myself to fly on Arod Corp's private jet. Were you nervous about letting us on there?
Yes.
I could tell.
Yeah.
Because no one talked to us, and also I was worried I smelled bad.
Yeah, but we actually we cleansed it up pretty good afterwards.
Yep.
And then I stacked a lot of food because I knew you were coming.
Yes. No, the flight attendant kept on coming up and was like, "Do you guys want more food? More food?" Also, shout out your daughter. Maybe the most power move I've ever seen in my entire life. We got sweet potato fries. She was walking by and she just took one. And I was like, "There you go. That's a Rodriguez right there. Do it." So it was fun though. We really appreciate that. It took a couple of years of like grinding you down, but it was fun because we went out to Seattle to interview Howard Schultz in person, which was a great interview. We talked about all the, starting Starbucks, his life as a poor kid in Brooklyn growing up. And I wanted to do one thing here, a little preview thing. We throw in a nugget, something that we've never heard. So Seattle, going back to Seattle, obviously a little bit of a homecoming because that's where you started your career. So my question for you, when you do go back to Seattle, is there a small part of you that's like, I kind of wish I had stayed here, done my whole career here, because you see guys who do their whole career for one team and it's something a little different. Do you ever have that feeling when you go back to Seattle?
Yeah, and look, there's always a romance about, starting and finishing. I mean, finishing where you started. And for me, it started as an 18-year-old. No further place domestically to Miami than Seattle. I mean, diagonally across the country. I knew that Starbucks was there. I knew Boeing was there. But I was like, I'm one step from Alaska. Mm-hmm. But playing at the Kingdom was comforting, playing with the greatest players in the world, 3 Hall of Famers, Ken Griffey Jr., Randy Johnson, and now Edgar Martinez, and a Hall of Fame type manager in Lou Piniella. It was awesome. A lot of that for me, Dan, kind of went away when we crossed the streets of Safeco Field. Griffey went to Cincinnati. Lou Piniella ended up leaving. For me, it was like perfect timing for me to go.
Were you at all close? Like, what was that contract negotiation like? Was Seattle in the running? Do you remember if they were close, a dollar figure?
They weren't close. Pat Gillick, who Hall of Fame general manager, who won with the Blue Jays twice and built up Baltimore, and just one of the best general managers, he felt that he was going to pay me a super premium, but for a shorter period of time. And at that time, being 24 and a free agent, I was looking for the years.
Right. So was there ever a moment where you almost did it, where it was like we were close to staying with Seattle, but it just didn't work out? Or was it always, I'm out of here?
They did something very smart, and I think more teams need to do that today, is call it my junior year, the year right before free agency in 1999. I was a free agent after the year 2000. They handed me an envelope, and that envelope had, it was about $145 million offer. Now I'm 23 years old. I'm like, holy shit, how do I say no to this?
Right.
And I rolled the dice and went to play my senior year.
Interesting. So, yeah, you could have very well have taken that money because it is guaranteed money, and you're like, I'm set for life no matter what, if you get injured or whatever it may be. And
I couldn't sleep for 365. I'm like, I got to be the dumbest guy in the world.
Right.
If something happens, if I get hurt, I just let all this money go.
Interesting. So that ties into Howard Schultz, and he is obviously in the fabric of the history of the city of Seattle, starting Starbucks. He owned the Sonics for a little bit. We got into that a little bit. And he's also a diehard baseball fan. So we talked a lot about baseball with him. Very interesting interview, really great talker. And someone that if he was hiring, you'd probably want to work for, but you wouldn't be able to do it without LinkedIn. You like that? That was nice.
So true.
We are hiring Barstool, that is, and the Corp is hiring, and we're doing it on LinkedIn. So we're putting up every single day new job listings to work at Barstool Sports, and you can only find them on LinkedIn. So that's our sponsor, and we were doing that beforehand. That's how much we love LinkedIn. And if you are an employer out there, you need to know that if you're not using LinkedIn, you're missing out on 600 million members, a big, big pool of qualified candidates for whatever job you're looking for. And to sweeten the pot, our sponsor, LinkedIn, has done something special. They're giving away $50 for free. So for your first job posting, $50 is on them. LinkedIn.com/thecorp. Again, that's LinkedIn.com/thecorp to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions apply. Go check them out right now. You need to. If you're looking for a job, even if you're not looking for a job, if you're looking to network, you need to be on LinkedIn because you can always find people. And people like Arod, people like Barstool, if Erica Nardini is looking for someone to hire, you might not even be looking for a job at that time, but I'm telling you, employers like that are always scouring LinkedIn to try to find qualified candidates for their job openings. So if you're not on there, you've already disqualified yourself. That's how good LinkedIn is. LinkedIn Jobs, go check it out. LinkedIn Jobs, if you want to put out a posting for a job, $50 on them, linkedin.com/thecorp. Go right now. Thank you to LinkedIn.
And now, Howard Schultz.
You're listening to The Corp, presented by Barstool Sports.
Well, here we are in Seattle with none other than one of the greatest entrepreneurs, which I shared this city with him many years ago with Ken Griffey and some of the great Seattle Mariners as well. Howard Schultz was the chairman and CEO of Starbucks for almost 25 years and co-founder of a consumer tech investment firm called Maverin. Former owner of the Seattle Supersonics and is also a proud husband of Sherry and a father of two. Howard grew up in New York, Canarsie Bayview Projects in New York City, becoming the first person in his entire family to attend college at Northern Michigan University and started at Xerox after college, becoming the general manager of a Swedish drip coffee maker, and in 1981 visited a store called Starbucks Coffee Company in Seattle, and obviously the rest is great history. So Howard, first of all, thank you so much for being on our show.
Great to be here. Thank you both.
I've been a big fan. Obviously, I got here in 1994. I arrived here as a 17-year-old, and I just knew that Seattle was the furthest place from Miami. and the Dodgers had the number 2 pick that year. And truth be told, I was hoping that I would go play for Tommy Lasorda. We actually had a deal done. And the Mariners drafted me, and I got here, and the entire city had a coating of Starbucks, and obviously the culture that you created here. First of all, just tell us a little bit about your childhood. You're a New York guy.
Sure. So I grew up in the projects in public housing in the Canarsie section of Brooklyn. Like so many of us, my childhood experiences shaped my life. A number of different episodes produced a level of insecurity, shame, vulnerability of being a poor kid. When I was 7 years old, my father was a truck driver picking up and delivering cloth diapers before the invention of Pampers. And it was a winter day. He fell on a sheet of ice, 1960. And basically, if you were a blue-collar worker in 1960 and had an accident, you were dismissed, fired. So there was no health insurance, no workman's compensation. And I, at the very young age of 7, kind of witnessed the fracturing of an American family. Couldn't pay the $96 a month rent, and went through a whole series of issues watching my parents struggle. I never possibly imagined that one day I would be in a position to be part of a company, build a company. But everything I've done professionally at Starbucks has been more or less to try and build the kind of company my father never got a chance to work for. So dignity and value. And then 25 years before the Affordable Care Act, providing comprehensive health insurance, ownership for every employee, and then 3 years ago, free college tuition for everybody.
Wow.
And so, in the environment we're in now, to hear people criticize or vilify success or capitalism, Starbucks in so many ways is I think, emblematic of a company that's been built by balancing profit and social responsibility and demonstrating that success can be shared.
So I want to talk about your college years and the fact that you were the first person in your family to go to college. But before we do that, sports growing up.
Yes.
Because, I think we find when we talk to people, entrepreneurs or people who are at the top of their profession, they have that competitive itch at an early age, whether it be through school or sports.
Yeah.
It seems like you were someone who had it through sports. What were sports like for you when you were growing up?
So we had a schoolyard that was too small for all the buildings in the projects. So from morning to night, there were 3 full-court basketball courts and a schoolyard. So all these kids came down at the exact same time, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, to play one of those games. And if you got in the game and you lost, you basically spent the next 3 hours sitting and waiting. Mm-hmm. This is concrete. So you did anything you possibly could to stay on that court. And that drove a tremendous amount of competitive pressure. You did not want to sit for 3 hours. It was that kind of environment. It was also an environment of a tremendous level of community because the environment was very diverse. So I grew up with kids very different than myself. We had one elevator in a building with 80 apartments, very small. Everyone shared the same kind of, we were all in it together. Mm-hmm. We knew each other really well. And then when I got to high school, I was fortunate enough to play quarterback on a high school football team many, many years ago.
You're right.
And
did you throw the ball?
I had a very good arm, not as strong as Alex's, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to be noticed one day by somebody who was looking for another kid. It's really kind of a weird story. And that's how I got to Northern Michigan University. However, when I went there to dream about playing football, I noticed that they were a little bigger in Michigan than they were in Brooklyn.
Yep.
And they wanted to move me to a wide receiver, worse than that, defensive back. And I said, you know what, I'm just not into that defensive back stuff. And so I ended up not playing. But I went to school with Tom Izzo and Steve Mariucci.
Right.
Wow.
And so watching Izzo in the last week or so has been great.
Yeah.
And can I mention what I just told you, what he said
yes,
on my...
absolutely.
So, my son Jordan and CJ McCollum have this podcast called Pull Up. And Izzo was on 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And he said something that was just so apropos for life. And so the question was, what kind of kids do you try and recruit? And Izzo says there's 3 kinds of kids. Kids who like it, kids who love it, and kids who live it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I recruit kids who live it.
Mm. That's awesome.
And that you can take that and apply it to anything.
Right.
Business, entrepreneurship, sports, and that is about sacrifice, loving something so much that you're willing to do anything. And that also goes back to Starbucks, because the odds on 1987, when it had 11 stores and 100 employees, to today would be virtually impossible.
Yeah, yeah.
But it can only happen in America.
Right. So you would say you liked sports. You liked football.
No, I loved it.
You loved it. You didn't live it.
He lived Starbucks.
No, but you lived Starbucks.
I lived Starbucks. I lived my family.
Part. I think that kind of is very telling. Like, you knew you didn't live football.
I did live the Yankees, though.
Right.
Yeah, and tell us about the Yankees. Look, you owned the Sonics for a while.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But baseball was one of your first love. You loved the Yankees.
I love baseball.
And your father.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So my father and I had a tough relationship. And he was very bitter, came back from World War II and never found his purpose. But he was a massive Yankee fan. And so 3 or 4 times during the summer, we would take the subway and go to Yankee Stadium and sit in right field, and Roger Maris was right in front of us.
Wow.
So 1961, should we name the team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is how crazy I am about the Yankees. And so Whitey Ford, number 16, is pitching.
Yeah.
Yogi Berra, number 8, or Elston Howard, number 32, is catching. Moose Skowron, first base, number 14. Bobby Richardson, second base, number 1. Tony Kubek, shortstop, number 10. Cleet Boyer, third base, number 6.
Good old Cleet.
The Mick is in center, number 7.
Yeah.
Roger Maris in right field, number 9. And then left field is either Blanchard or Tommy Tresh, 15.
Manager?
Manager, Casey Stengel and Ralph Houck.
Number?
Casey Stengel, 37.
Yes.
Ralph Houck.
This is, you know what this is? Can I just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
This is very comforting.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I think all the sports knowledge that I know has stopped me from being like really successful.
Yeah.
Because it's all just trash in my brain.
Yeah.
But hearing you rattle off the 1961 Yankees
Yeah.
and be the person you are.
Yeah.
Look, kids who are listening at home, you can actually care about sports and care about stupid statistics and still make it.
And there's so much about baseball strategically that applies to so much.
Yeah.
Because the game is so much science.
It's
as
thinking
well as
man's
art.
game.
Yes. Yeah.
It's science and it's failure. If you fail
me
7 out of
about
10
that.
times,
Okay.
right,
Yeah.
you walk into the Hall of Fame. And it's really the gritty, the people that can actually persevere and deal with, the negativity, right?
Yeah.
And most people can't. It's often not the most talented. It's people like Mariano and Jeter and Pettit. I mean, there's probably, 1,000 pitchers that are better than Andy Pettit.
Yeah.
But if it's in the fall and
Right.
in Yankee Stadium, there's
Yeah.
no one you would pick
Right.
on top of Andy Pettit.
Number 48.
Number
There you go.
46.
46.
Would you buy the Yankees if they went for sale?
Not for the price they would be.
Yeah.
But to own the Yankees
Would you kick the tires?
Yeah, I would.
There you
Well,
go.
I was at
That
spring
means
spring
something.
training last week.
Yeah.
And talked to Reggie, but the highlight,
You were in Tampa.
I was in Tampa.
Wow.
But the highlight for me, I was just out of my mind talking to Aaron Judge. And I could not believe the size of him. I mean, to be that big and that athletic and so humble.
And such a gentleman.
Oh, what a
That's
great
right.
kid.
Fantastic.
Have you spent a lot of time with him?
A lot of time. I mean, we've brought him up since the minor leagues, and
Yeah.
he has not changed one bit. Here's a guy that's 6'7", 280 pounds, less than 10% body fat, has a 32-inch vertical, and can hit a ball 500 feet. I told Major League Baseball this week,
Yeah.
you should spend tens of millions of dollars marketing Aaron Judge, because he's the one guy that not only transcends sports, but he's the one guy that you can build over the next couple of decades. He is, and he plays for the Yankees.
So that's actually interesting. We'll get back to your business career, but Alex and I always talk about it because I love baseball, but it's not my, I love football more than anything. And we always talk about baseball and the image problem of having superstars. You grew up in a time when baseball players were like the American superstar.
Yes.
Mickey Mantle was the Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers. Like that was it.
Bigger.
Right. So where do you think baseball can do to kind of, rectify what's been a little bit of a slip the last 10 years or so?
Well, it's interesting because when I was at spring training, what I noticed is how old most of the people were there. I guess one, because
Florida.
retired people, Florida. But I assume that the baseball audience, the generation is getting older. The question is, how does baseball market to millennials when the game is long, slow? I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, it's tough.
And baseball, unlike other sports, in my mind, is generational in terms of the team you root for. So if your parents or your father is not a baseball fan, you're not growing up in a household where you're watching baseball.
I also think it's the issue that I can't really wrap my head around is it's so city specific. You root for your team in baseball and that's it. Whereas on an NFL Sunday, you'll watch every game. It doesn't really matter.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about that.
Like I don't care about what's happening in the AL West or the, you know what I mean, or the Central in the AL or something like that. So it's hard to care about other teams, whereas basketball and football especially, you can kind of watch any game. And you can't really watch, if you're not a fan of, the Yankees, you can't really watch a Yankees-Orioles game in April.
So Howard, this is interesting. So when we all grew up, baseball's number one. Today's number 3, maybe 4. I think it's a classic case of good is the enemy of great. I mean, good is the enemy of great. And the reason why, when I entered the major leagues, I was 18 years old, right here in this city in Seattle. The industry in 1994 was $1 billion industry. Today is $10 billion.
Baseball.
Yes.
Okay.
When it was Major League Baseball was at $1 billion, the players took home 60% of the pie. Today is at $10 billion. The owners are taking 60% of the pie. So it's a massive shift. So because there's a $10 billion industry, in many ways, owners don't want to mess with, the goods, right? In many ways, the best thing that can happen to baseball is to fall on their face a little bit and have to play aggressive to catch up, like the NBA and like the NFL that have done a fantastic job growing the game globally, but also connecting to the next generation because they can take more chances. Baseball is married to its history, but you want to make that your asset, not your biggest liability.
Yeah.
So
Also, I think Little League is way down in terms of how many kids are playing baseball now.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a Hall of Fame story?
Yeah.
Sure.
About baseball?
Yeah.
So my dear friend Tony La Russa was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I'd never been to Cooperstown. I went to Cooperstown with my son Jordan. And in the breakfast in the morning, every Hall of Fame player, iconic player, was walking through. So Ernie Banks before he passed away, Hank Aaron, Bob Gibson. They were. I couldn't believe it. I was just in awe. I was just thinking to myself, if only my father was alive to see this. But about 10 minutes in, a god walked in, and I'm looking at him, and I can't believe it's him. And it was one of the ones, like you just mentioned off stage before we got on about Michael Jordan. When this guy walked in, I couldn't talk. I was like starting to sweat, and it was Sandy Koufax.
Oh, wow.
And Koufax walked in, and I swear the whole room turned around, everyone. And he was so regal, and he's so handsome and so erect,
Great shape.
great shape. And I just couldn't get off my chair. And my son Jordan kept on saying, "You gotta go introduce yourself." I couldn't do it.
Now, of course,
I missed it.
for
That's
a
actually
listener,
better though, because then
I
it
missed
stays.
it.
You know, like if you say hello to
I
him,
missed Koufax.
and he's like, I don't really want to talk to you, then you lose that. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, for our listeners, one of the things that people don't know about Koufax, besides being one of the greatest pitchers of all time, he was even a bigger icon in the Jewish community.
Yes.
And
he wouldn't pitch.
Shabbat Shalom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was down for Shabbat. But I just spent some time with him in the World Series, and I got to tell you, he is probably the best left-handed pitcher of all time, and even a better person with unbelievable character. And like you said, Howard, incredible. He's regal.
Yeah, he is, don't you think?
Yeah.
The way he carries himself.
Awesome.
He's a
That's
good-looking guy.
Beyond that,
really
he's
is.
just, this looks like
the white hair and
Yeah.
the tan. He's
Yeah.
a good-looking guy. All right, look, that was he is. I feel
He
fine
really is.
saying it.
Yeah,
right?
he's a good-looking guy.
I remember when he came out when the Dodgers were in the World Series last. I think they've been in the World Series a million times and never won it. But he comes out and it's like, whoa, kind of breathtaking. Sandy Koufax, there he is. All right, so that was our baseball little mini.
Okay.
I have a
which
mini
could've done
question about
forever.
entrepreneur. I mean,
Yeah.
and what he's done to be a great leader.
Yeah, so
Okay.
let's start with the story of Starbucks. Maybe walk us through. You graduate college, you go to Xerox,
Yeah.
and by complete almost accident, you walk into a Starbucks store, right? Do you tell us that story?
Well, I was working for a company that sold a product to Starbucks. So I came to Seattle for the first time in '81. And I walked into the first store at the Pike Place Market and was swept away with just the essence of the experience. And basically, for a year, I tried to convince the two founders to hire me. And I was successful. So I came out in 1982. My wife, Sherry, and I, and our dog, Golden Retriever, drove 3,000 miles, came to Seattle. We had 6 stores when I arrived. A year later, I went to Italy for the first time to a trade show for Starbucks. And while I was there, ran into hundreds of Italian espresso bars. Prior to that, Starbucks Coffee Company did not sell any beverage, just coffee for the home. So when I saw the romance, the theater, the sense of community, I raced home to the founders and said, I think I've seen the future of the business. We have to transform Starbucks and bring out espresso. They didn't think it was a great idea, so they didn't want to do it. So to make a long story short, I left Starbucks and started my own coffee company and opened 3 coffee bars with Christine Day.
Wow.
2 in Seattle, 1 in Vancouver.
What was it called?
Il Giornale,
Okay.
after the Italian newspaper. I don't know how long we have, but I'll keep
Oh,
going.
please.
Okay. So I don't have a salary. We're really struggling. And Starbucks itself gets into financial trouble after it acquires a company in California called Peet's Coffee Company. So Peet's and Starbucks are one company. The founder of Starbucks comes to me and says, we're going to sell Starbucks. We can't keep both companies. We think you're the right guy to buy it. Okay, 2 quick stories. The first one is, as I said, I had no salary. And Sherry was pregnant with our first child, Jordan. And Sherry's parents come and visit us. And Sherry's father says, I want to take a walk with you.
Uh-oh. That's always a problem.
Father-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah, father-in-law.
Okay.
So we go for a walk. And he says, listen, my daughter's 8 months pregnant. She's still working. You've got a dream, but it's a hobby. You got to get a job.
Wow.
I start crying. Crying. I'm embarrassed. I said, well, I understand. Let me talk to Sherry. So that night, later that night, they go to bed. I tell Sherry the story. She's outraged that her father would have said that to me. So at that moment, if Sherry would have said, I think he's right, there'd be I wouldn't be here. You'd be talking to somebody else.
Right.
She says, we're going to see this through. And she supported me. We raised the money. However, in raising the money to acquire Starbucks, something really dramatic happened. And that is, he gave me 60 days to acquire the company.
This is the Pete's owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The original Starbucks
The original
owner.
Starbucks owner,
Yeah.
right.
And so 60 days exclusive, and he came to me, and it was $3.8 million to buy 6 stores in '87. Now, I didn't have $3.8 million. I had to go out and raise the money. So he comes to me in 30 days, and he says, how you doing? I said, well, I got half of it raised. I'm sure I'll find the other half, but I did not know if I could. And he says to me, one of your investors from Il Giornale has come to me, $4 million offer, all cash, no due diligence. We're going to have to take it.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, no way, you can't do that.
Right.
So here's the punchline. I tell a friend of mine the story that my whole life is about to end. This is going to be a crushing blow. And he says to me, you got to go see the senior partner of our law firm tomorrow morning. I said, okay, I will. Who is it? And he says, a name I never heard of, Bill Gates Sr.
Oh my gosh.
Bill Gates Sr.,
Right.
not Bill Gates.
Right.
So 8 o'clock in the morning, I go see Bill Gates Sr. I tell him the whole story. And he says, have you left anything out? I said, no. Is everything you told me true? I said, yes. And he says, come back in 2 hours. Literally. So I leave, I come back in 2 hours, and Bill Gates Sr. says, Howard, come on, I'm going to go for a walk. I said, where are we going? He said, we're going to go see the man. The man who's trying to steal the company.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if he called him. I don't know I said, okay. So my heart is palpitating. I don't know what's going to happen. We walk in, and he storms into the guy's office. And Bill Gates Sr. is 6'7", a big man, and at the time was the lawyer in town. This other guy was the titan business person in Seattle at that time, in '87. And he leans over his desk and he says, you should be ashamed of yourself, trying to steal this kid's dream. So this is what's going to happen. We're going to walk out of here. Howard's going to buy the company, and you're going to stand down. And we walk out. And I said, Mr. Gates, what just happened?
Right.
And he said, you're going to buy the company, and I'm going to help you with my son. My son and I are going to help you. Now,
Oh my
now
gosh.
listen to this. To this day, Bill Gates Sr. never told a soul of the humble act of helping me. Never charged me, nothing. So a year and a half ago, at the Microsoft CEO Summit, I'm speaking. And Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who's on the Starbucks board, says, you got to tell that story, because Bill's in the front row.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell the story, and I assume Bill knows. So I get off stage, and he says, who was that? Who was the guy? And I said, you don't know? He said, my dad never told me the story. So the humility of Bill
Right.
Gates Sr. and having my back like that, helping this kid. So Sherry Schultz at night says, we're sticking, and Bill Gates Sr. are the reason that Starbucks was able to build this company.
That's
Oh my
fantastic.
gosh.
I mean, that what I love about those
Unbelievable.
stories.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and what I love about those stories is I think a lot of people who glorify entrepreneurial behavior and capitalism, which you built your company on, think that it's just someone who did it all by
No.
themselves and they just were better than everyone else. But what you just said is it takes some help, it takes some luck, it takes people
Yeah.
to
I'm not the
kinda
smartest guy in the
assist
room
you on the way.
But it's a team sport.
Right.
It
Right.
really is. So now, Howard, take us. We have a lot of young listeners
Yeah.
that are in college or going to business school and are just entrepreneurs, and
Okay.
they'll all look up to you. Walk us through the exercise. So now, how old are you at the time when?
I was in my mid-30s.
Okay, so you're mid-30s. Your net worth is not very high.
Zero.
you've raised now, to say $3.8 million. You have 6 stores. At this point, how much equity percentage is Howard Schultz owning the Starbucks?
Right.
And then how do you go out to then grow it from there?
Yeah. So at that time, I probably owned half the company. But all along, I wanted to build, at the time, a national brand. And I thought if we had 100 stores, I thought that would be the goal, aspirational goal. But all along, I realized that what we were going to build in our stores was going to be an experiential brand. And that, what I mean by that is that the marketing of a consumer product was not going to be how we were going to build Starbucks. It was going to be by the experience in our stores, and the people who wear the green apron were going to be the equity of the brand. So right from the beginning, we realized that the culture, the values, the guiding principles of the company were going to define how we were going to build Starbucks and put people first. And that goes back to what I said earlier about health insurance, making everyone an owner, and free college tuition. But basically, when we started, we said, we have to exceed the expectations as managers and leaders of every single person who works for the company, so that person can exceed the expectation of every customer. That's one thing. Second thing is, I realized early on, we started raising money from venture capital people. And they had, and I should say for every entrepreneur who's trying to raise money, that raising money from a VC is as important as hiring a person. Because the money, in a sense, is fungible. If you have a good idea, you're going to find people interested. But make sure you find people who share your values and understand specifically what this business' core purpose and reason for being is. And I want to come back to that. So every business, every enterprise, every organization must have a core purpose and reason for being. And everyone in the company must understand what that is. To the point where if you have 100 people, you should be able to ask them, what is our core purpose and reason for being? And more or less, they should be able to tell you. Because that is what the business is going to stand for. Then, the lens in which you're going to make every decision, especially the early ones that are going to define and imprint the brand, behavior, culture, has to be through that lens of what your core purpose is. And what your core purpose is can't be only to make money. It's a shallow goal. You will not attract great people. You won't retain them because people want to work for something, a company, an enterprise, an endeavor that has to be greater than the equity of just profit. And so everything we've tried to do is build a performance-driven company through the lens of humanity. And along the way, as we started becoming a little bit more successful, we began to realize that, and this is not trite, this is real, that not every business decision should be an economic one. That you've got to make long-term investments in things that really matter. And what really matters is not always the short-term decision of what is the bottom line. And there's so much pressure on the entrepreneur to make money, especially if you're VC-backed. And that's why it's so vitally important to get the VC in early to understand what the long-term vision is, so that you're not arguing in a boardroom about all this.
Right.
So speaking about that, just real quick. So for the last almost 40 years, we've had a leadership meeting every Monday and a board meeting every quarter. Now, I'm not in the company anymore. I've left Starbucks a year ago. But for 36 years, I've had 2 chairs that were empty in that room. 2 chairs. And so there's a room of 10, 15, 20 people and 2 empty chairs as a metaphor. And the metaphor was this. 1 chair is occupied by a Starbucks customer and 1 is by a Starbucks employee, who we call a partner, because everyone's an owner. And everyone understood those 2 chairs, we have to answer the question in the affirmative. Does this decision, strategy, tactic, whatever we're going to do, going to make the customer and our people proud? And if the answer is yes, let's do it. If the answer is no, let's not. And if the answer is gray, let's keep debating it. But there was always an opportunity to kind of refer back to ensure the fact that we were making decisions that are going to make our people proud.
Can you think of like a decision that you maybe didn't do because of that exact thing you're saying? Like a
Sure.
big decision that you said, you know what, this is not going to make our employee or our customer proud.
So early on, in the formative years of Starbucks, the trend in coffee was artificially flavored coffee. It was vanilla cream and stuff that was not the purity of what we did. We had research to suggest we would have a 30% incremental boost in revenue if we added that, but that would have destroyed and diluted the integrity of everything we've done. We wouldn't do it. If we roasted coffee lighter, we'd have a 5% increase in profit. We wouldn't do that. So it was always about the quality and the integrity of what we stood for.
What was the decision behind, I was reading up, on the plane, what was the decision behind not doing any franchises?
The answer to the question of not franchising is an easy one, and that is going back to believing that the secret sauce of Starbucks, we have no proprietary technology, is the culture and values of the company. I did not believe we could build the kind of culture that we were aspiring to build in a system that was franchised with independent owners. It would have been financially beneficial because it would have required less capital.
Right.
And franchising is great for lots of companies, but not consistent with what we wanted to do.
Interesting.
So all about the culture.
Yeah.
Give us an example. Give us a little sneak peek at one of these Monday morning meetings of how you would start. Pretend like we have your senior management team is here. You're talking about leadership, and all weekend you've been brewing on something that's maybe just pissing you off that you know is not right as a leader. Tell us how you start and kind of give us a little button on
We're your
something.
employees.
Yeah, we are
Okay.
your employees.
Did you not bring any bagels?
No, we didn't bring bagels.
Okay.
Okay, so first off, every Starbucks meeting, every meeting starts off with a coffee tasting.
Wow.
Every meeting. And not just a coffee tasting, but a French press of a coffee, and someone in that room has been assigned that day to take us through the coffee tasting, the features and benefits of that coffee, and the responsibility of describing with great acuity the balance, the acidity, and the flavor of that coffee. So we start out with the core purpose and reason for being. We're a coffee company.
Also, sneaky gets everyone really alert.
That's
That
true.
was smart by you.
And how many people are in the room?
Yeah.
Could be 10 to 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Wake
sometimes,
everyone up.
we also would invite people who are not in the leadership team meeting to sit in and to learn and to witness what we're talking about, and everything was transparent. We'd start off with reviewing the sales of the past week. Now, by the way, when you're in the retail business, you're living it.
Right.
Remember? Living
Week
it?
to week, yeah.
You're living it, no, day to day. So at 5 a.m. every single morning for the past 36 years, I would get up at 5 a.m. with basically a printout of every store's sales revenue in the world versus our plan.
And how many stores at the time, at the height?
Well, we have 30,000 today.
Jeez.
But it didn't matter whether we had 11 or 30,000.
Wow.
Right.
And so we had a blueprint of everything. So we managed the company day to day. And so there should never be a surprise as to how we're doing. But in the Monday morning, we would review the sales of the week, the past week versus plan, how we're doing for the month. And as a public company, we're always concerned with, we got to report on a quarterly basis. So
Right.
we had an expression at Starbucks of constantly trying to underpromise and overdeliver. And Starbucks stock price has done pretty well over the years, and I think one of the reasons is a real focus and discipline on making sure that we deliver to the shareholders.
Yeah.
But after we review the numbers, then we're talking about the next quarter. We might be talking about innovation. There could be a core subject that is coming up as a result of a problem we have. And like a fine-tuned car, there's always something that's not exactly perfect that we're dealing with. And there's also, I think, lessons to be learned. One of the things that happens along the way is you start thinking that you're better than you are. And I'll give you an example. So innovation. Starbucks is a very innovative company. If you think back on the things that we've done, for example, the mobile app right now. So that's the most ubiquitous mobile app in America today. And we were at the forefront of that very early on. So innovation would be discussed in that meeting. And the reason I would discuss it is people would get very excited about a line extension being so successful. New flavor, new size, great. But that is not innovation. That is just the price of admission. Innovation is being disruptive. And when you are the leader in your category, like we were and are, you have to cannibalize yourself. And so the entrepreneurial opportunity for all of us is you've got to constantly kind of see around, have the curiosity to see around corners, to anticipate things that no one else is seeing, and then have the courage to make a big bet.
Interesting.
So you have not seen the Starbucks roastery, I assume.
No.
So you're going to be in Seattle for how long?
I leave tomorrow night after the game.
Say you have to do a treat for yourself.
Is there one in downtown?
Yeah.
Okay, I can visit. I have my girls here.
Your
So
entire team must go to the roastery. So we now have a roastery in Seattle, Milan, Shanghai, Tokyo, New York City,
Wow.
and we're getting ready to open up in Chicago at the Crate and Barrel building in North Michigan.
Yep.
So the roastery is a project that we dreamed about 9 years ago.
Oh, I know what it is. Yep.
Okay, and what was that? You'll be shocked at what the motivation and the inspiration for this. So literally, it's the Willy Wonka chocolate factory and Gene Wilder. So one day, I invite a group of Starbucks people to my house. I say, I want to watch a movie with you. They think I'm crazy.
yeah.
What do you mean you want to watch a movie? I said, we're going to put on a movie. We're going to watch it. I'm not going to say a word. And then I'm going to show you something. So I bring the most creative people in the company to my house. I put on Willy Wonka. They think I'm absolutely, he's lost his
The
mind.
Johnny Depp one?
No.
Okay,
Willy,
good.
no.
Thank God.
No, Gene Wilder. Gene
Yeah,
Wilder.
yeah, yeah. No, I just want
the
to make
original.
sure. I want to make sure.
We watched the movie, and prior to that, I had been dreaming about this for 9 years.
It's everlasting gobstopper.
Yeah, and I just did not have, it wasn't the right time. And for 9 years, I've been sketching and dreaming about this. So the movie ends, and I say, we are going to build the Willy Wonka of coffee. And I said, where? How? What's it going to be? I said, we are going to bring people into a space, and they are going to be swept away with just the kind of emotion, and they're not going to believe what is going on. And I've got the site, and we're going to do it. And so now this kind of thing took not only imagination, but the entrepreneurship of, here's a company, at this point we're really successful, but you've got to keep reinventing. This is the point. You can't sit. Like a sports team, how many teams repeat?
Right.
Not many.
No, not many at all.
Why not? You know, are the Red Sox going to repeat this year? Chances are hubris sets in, you're not as hungry as you were, jealousy, envy, whatever. Salaries. So success has to be, you have to recognize that success is not an entitlement. It has to be earned every single day, not only as an entrepreneur, even as when you get successful as a business. Constantly reinventing, surprising, delighting the customer, and making your people proud. So we opened this thing up 3.5 years ago in Seattle. Now, a typical Starbucks store is like 1,500 square feet. This is almost 30,000 square feet.
Wow.
Jeez.
So it doesn't pencil out on paper because no one can figure out how can we afford this? No one's ever sold this much coffee. It doesn't make any sense. I knew in my heart that this thing was going to be so successful. I just, in my bones, I knew.
Why? Why'd you think that?
Just instinctively, just felt this was going to reinvent the company. So, before you leave, your girls are here.
Yeah, Natasha and Ella, they're right there.
Okay.
They love Starbucks.
You got to go to the roastery.
Okay.
We'll have someone take you.
Yeah.
Love that.
You'll have a hot chocolate or a frappuccino that will knock you out.
There we go.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
Love that.
Success is not an entitlement. Has to be earned every day, and the entrepreneurial spirit of a company can't be only in the early stages.
Right.
Even when you're mature.
Right.
And like a winning team, you can't rest.
Howard,
I like that a
I would
lot.
tell my teammates in New York, we would have a great game. We scored 12 runs, 7 home runs. I mean, the team is cocky.
Yeah.
I said, boys, you're only as good as what you do the day after greatness. That's the true measurement.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. That's absolutely true. We have a few more minutes, but
Okay.
I wanted to touch on the Sonics real quick.
Okay, sure.
Regrets,
Yeah.
your side of the story. I know you talked about it in your book.
Yes.
Obviously the average fan is probably still mad at you.
Yes.
So walk us through maybe mistakes or what happened in your mind.
Well, first off, the thought of owning any professional sports team for me, coming from where I came from, was such a dream, such an opportunity. The interesting thing is I once had an opportunity to invest in the Mariners, but I didn't want to be a small minority owner. So when the Sonics came up, it was a great opportunity. Now, I didn't have enough money at the time to buy the team myself, and there was a competing group, and so we merged our efforts. We didn't really know each other, and a lot of people came together, so we had like 50 investors, 2 separate groups. I was the majority owner of the 2 groups, but I did not have 51%.
Right.
So that made it somewhat difficult. We had the worst lease in professional sports. We could have sold out every game, and we lost money every single year. We started getting capital calls. Some of the owners were complaining about that because I said, I don't think we'll have any capital calls, we'll be fine, but we did. I went to the city, I went to the city council, I went to the state legislator, and unfortunately, the Mariners and the Seahawks had just gotten new baseball and football stadium. So the city did not have the wherewithal nor the political desire to help us with the team. So I decided, in the best interest of me and my investors, why don't we sell it to the other group? And the other group did not want to buy it. So that was the first problem. So then I went out to everyone in Seattle that I thought had the means to buy the team, and no one showed up. Then we had a high-profile investor from Silicon Valley come and wanted to pay us a big price, but told us right out of the gate, I'm moving the team to San Jose. And I said, wait, I can't do that. So we turned him down. David Stern was the commissioner at the time, and he said, I think I have a prospective owner who's willing to negotiate with the city of Seattle. But if he can't get a deal, he might move the team. But I can't imagine if the city of Seattle knows that someone from out of town is going to buy the team, they're going to negotiate with him.
Right.
That was the going-in assumption.
Yeah.
And so I made the decision with the other owners, but I led it. I'm culpable. I'm responsible to sell it to this Oklahoma group who tried valiantly to negotiate with the city. And basically the mayor, the city council told them to pound sand. And a year later, with Kevin Durant, left Seattle. Now, do I regret it? I do. When I see kids with Supersonic uniforms on and jerseys, I know that I have broken their hearts. And if I had to do it over again, I would not have done it. It was a mistake. And I can't turn the clock back.
Well, bring them back.
Well, I've talked to Adam Silver about this a lot. And I think now that Seattle's getting a hockey team, there's a chance. Not for me. But
would you help in?
I told Adam Silver I would do anything.
Right.
And there was a lot of people in Seattle trying to get an NBA team.
Yeah.
Seattle should have an NBA team, and they will get one.
Yeah.
So Howard, you go back. I'm obsessed with Starbucks in the story, and we only have a few minutes left, but. You have this conversation with your father-in-law. Okay. It didn't go well.
Yeah.
Sherry gives you a boost of confidence, so you go for it. Then you run into an angel, Mr. Gates, Bill Gates' father out of all people. Never told anyone. And then you take this company, like the Yankees, on a skyrocket. It goes and it goes. And then you decide, like Michael Jordan, I'm going to sit out a little bit. Yeah. And the company starts overbuilding and gets, in their loses its ways that you've created for many, many years. Yeah. 2008, you come back, you make a really big decision. You take 10,000 store managers and you fly everybody to New Orleans. Everyone said, what the hell is Howard doing?
Right.
You go out and have an incredible meeting. I still remember the speech. I heard that speech in real time when it hit the market. And tell us why you think that's been one of the best investments of your career.
Right. Thank you for all that research and understanding all that. The first thing is Starbucks got into trouble because of a disease inside the company, and the disease was hubris. We had been on this magical carpet ride that everything we touched turned to gold, and people allowed success and the growth of the company to cover up mistakes. Now, I was the chairman of the company, not the CEO, so in a sense I was still culpable. And these were not bad people, but they fell into bad habits, undisciplined habits of chasing growth and the stock price. So I came back in 2008, just like you said. And I did two things. One is I stood up in front of the entire company, first day back, and apologized to them and their families that we had let them down. And all I asked of them was to once again believe in the core values of the company and to take everything personally. But we had to rebuild trust in the company. So a month later, we decided we were going to close every single store, because what we discovered when I came back is that one of the decisions someone made was to change the chemistry of the coffee to make more money.
Wow.
And I noticed that the quality of the coffee and how the coffee was being made did not taste the same. And that was one of the reasons why we had customer attrition. So I closed every single store at an unbelievable price, expense, to retrain people. And people said, what are you retraining people on? And I said, we're retraining people on how to make coffee. People couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And the honesty and the transparency of that worked in our favor, both with our people and with the market.
Right.
Then, about a month or two later, I said, I need an opportunity to be in front of 10,000 store managers. And this was during the cataclysmic financial crisis when no company was traveling.
Right.
It was just awful. So we had 3 cities come in as a bake-off, municipalities trying to get us to come to their city. And when the New Orleans people came in, they were crying in the meeting about the cause and the effect of Katrina. And they said it would mean so much to the city if you brought this meeting. We need the revenue.
Wow.
So we went to New Orleans. So the first thing we did to restore faith in the values of the company is we committed that first day 50,000 hours of community service in the 9th Ward in New Orleans that were so effective. So all of us are working side by side, everyone in the company. And so before we had minute one of the meeting, which cost $30 million, money we didn't have, and we were being questioned by the board and shareholders.
I remember.
How could you spend $30 million on a meeting? People thought it was some kind of convention. It wasn't a convention. It was a restoration. It was a transformation. And so we had the meeting, we had workshops, and on the third day, I had to give a $30 million speech in the basketball arena.
Wow.
Now, here's a lesson about leadership. About an hour before I'm ready to go on stage, a couple of colleagues of mine who I've worked with for 20 years, this is a team that's been together all these years, because I brought everyone back with me when I came back.
Wow.
People who had left, come back, we're gonna do it again.
Everyone from the sidelines, you brought them back in.
Bring them back, bring them back. Okay, so we're back together. And they said, what are you gonna talk about? So I showed them a little outline of my talk. And they said, Howard, you can't say these things. You can't possibly share this information. Why? So people were so afraid because no one in the company really knew how bad things were. We had 8 months left. Starbucks Coffee Company in 2008 of solvency.
Wow.
8 months left.
Wow.
If things continued the way they were, we were going to run out in 8 months.
Wow.
And if you tell these people, if you tell that, you're going to scare the hell out of them. They won't be able to handle the information. So here's the question. As a leader, if you want fellowship, if you want people to join you in this cause, how could they possibly join you in this cause? It's going to take so much sacrifice and asking them to live it if you don't share everything with them about what is going on in the company. You can't hold back. You must trust them with the same information. So instinctively, I just felt absolutely, I'm going to give them everything I know. And then I'm going to ask something of them. And that is, join me in this cause for you and your family.
Yeah.
And everyone you represent, to show the world that Starbucks is who it says it is, that we can restore the glory of this company by going back to what we know, exceeding the expectation of every customer. That's all we have to do. And if we do that, everything will be fine. Well, that 8 months never happened. And it wasn't because of that speech. But if I did not tell the truth, if I wasn't transparent, if I didn't ask something of them, Starbucks would not have transformed itself.
Yeah.
And so leadership also is about having the confidence in your people to understand and be in it with you. The other thing is, I was very vulnerable in front of 10,000 people. And I think leaders, especially men, have a hard time demonstrating vulnerability. And I think it's a strength of character, not a weakness. And people come to you when you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
I have two more, but I know
I'm ready to
we
run
have
to the
time?
wall right now. Yeah. Do we have time?
Okay.
All right. We
Can I
have
ask?
time. All right. Great.
I have one.
I have a bunch of
I'm
ideas,
obsessed
too,
with it. Okay,
rapid
so
fire.
so there, and I'm talking for like the great young entrepreneurs. When we do this podcast, that's my inspiration, and they don't get to hear someone like you very often. You've built an empire, a conglomerate, and you build it through great people. How important, A, is people in an organization, one, and two, if Howard Schultz was 22 out of B school or just out of you graduated from school, and you're broke, like a lot of our listeners, we all were broke, right? What advice would you give yourself or a 22 or 23-year-old on how to impress someone like Howard Schultz if I want to come get a job in your office in Seattle?
Okay. So first off, Alex, I do not have a business degree.
Neither do I.
I didn't go to business
Either,
school.
me three.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
Everything I've learned, in a sense, I learned growing up and learned from others. So what I've told my own kids is, first off, you have to find something that you really love. And you can't fake that. And I think you got to be really curious about the world and put yourselves in situations where you're uncomfortable. You're meeting people who are not part of your sphere of influence. And be as curious as possible about the world. And in terms of someone coming into Starbucks about interviewing for a job or impressing me, I'm not concerned about your resume or where you went to college. I want to know about your life. I want to know about your personal story. You know, one of the questions I ask everyone I've ever interviewed is, tell me the book you're reading. And I'm not, it's not a test.
Big Short.
I just want to know, I want to know more about you. And what I'm always looking for is people who are hungry, people who are willing to sacrifice for the company. And every one of us is going to make a hiring mistake. And the hardest thing for an entrepreneur or anyone in business is to realize that you made the hiring mistake because you convinced yourself that you can change that person. And more often than not, you can't. So one of the lessons of entrepreneurship in all aspects of business is if you're going to fail fast.
Yeah.
And admit it and move on.
Yeah.
And try not to make that mistake again. But there isn't a business that I know of, any business, that is not skewed towards the values and behavior of people. And people must be aligned, they must be facing the same direction, and everything about behavior matters. And everyone's eyes is on the leader. And so live your life like the camera's on.
Yeah. Did you have another question? You
The
want
last
to go
one,
rapid fire? You go last question, then I'll
Okay,
go
last
rapid
question, and
fire.
maybe a
How
shorter
are we doing?
answer.
Is this,
we're
yeah,
doing
this is
unbelievable. Are you
fantastic.
kidding me? I mean,
No, we can go
and
forever.
thank you for your team. They're
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. We love Howard Schultz. We love Starbucks, and this is homecoming for me. So I'm happy to be here. I'm in a great mood. Howard, when you think about the early mid '80s, and you thought about this dream that you had, and by the way, you didn't tell us that you had to convince Sherry you got to come with me, honey, to Seattle because there's something. She's like, what? I'm not going to Seattle. Anyway, that's for another conversation. But when you thought about your performer and you get your MBA guys to write, here's the 3, 5, 7-year performer, you left something out. And it was going into communities, African-American communities, Hispanic communities, like my community. And for whatever reason, the $3 or $5 Starbucks maybe wasn't in the plans. A guy, a 6'9" point guard, comes into your office.
All right.
Magic Johnson says, I can be your partner. You've never franchised at the point.
Right.
What about Magic's pitch convinced you? Obviously, it was a very successful 125 stores that then you bought back. My question to you is, tell me about Magic's pitch and what you thought when he walked into your store.
Sure. So I had a mutual friend who said one day that Magic Johnson wants to come to Seattle and meet you. So you mentioned the Michael Jordan story. I said, absolutely.
Of course.
100%. So Irvin Magic Johnson walks in, and you know his personality. I mean, he is effusive.
Yeah.
And he had a genuine concern for bringing quality premium products into underserved communities. And he said, I'm coming here to invite you to something. I want to invite you to a movie theater that I own in LA. And I said, so a week or two later, so we met Magic, we had dinner, we knew what he wanted to do, what the pitch was, and he said, I want to show you, come to the movie theater. So he was involved at the time, I don't remember the company.
Sony.
And
Sony Theaters.
Okay,
with
so
Peter Guber.
Yeah, so he took me there, and what I saw was without question, the fact that he and his understanding of the African American community specifically skewed towards doing something for them that they would not have had access to. So for me, it wasn't so much magic, although it was. It was an opportunity to bring Starbucks to underserved communities in a way that at the time we didn't quite understand. We didn't have the knowledge of how to do it. I think we had the license to do it, but we didn't. So we needed, I think, an ambassador, and Magic turned out to be exactly what he said he would be, and he showed up, and he was real. We had a great partnership, and then as we got bigger and more scale, and he got into other businesses, it was just an opportunity, I think, to realize we did great things together. We're still friends today, but Magic opened up the door to some underserved communities for us, and it was the only time we did anything like that. And Magic came to Jordan's wedding. And so I'm still friends with Irvin. We're both rooting for Michigan State. I think we both would probably be at that game in D.C. on Sunday if they play Duke.
There you go.
I know Howard representing over 60 million Hispanics and having Starbucks all over our communities.
Yeah.
We love it, and we thank you for it.
Can I one more story?
Of course.
Yeah.
So I was in Miami 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And, I have an endeavor going on right now about thinking of running for president. I think you know.
Okay.
Heard something about that.
Alex, did you know that?
I did.
By the way, the People's a Means thing, you got roasted for that. You know that,
No,
right?
I know that.
Okay,
I think you'd be fantastic.
You made fun of that. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, thank you, Alex.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
So while I was in Miami, I gave a speech at Miami-Dade College.
Okay, yeah.
And then after that, I was invited to Vicky's Bakery in the Cuban section of Miami.
Okay.
And I had an extraordinary opportunity to talk to about 100 people in front of this very famous Cuban bakery. And all I heard all afternoon was these great American stories of Cuban Americans who had come from Cuba and realized great success. And so when I hear the president talking about the downside of immigration, what I experienced that day gave me great hope and understanding about the power of immigration and these wonderful Cuban Americans.
I love that.
That's fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah. All right, you ready for a little rapid fire?
You're making me nervous.
He's a New Yorker,
Okay.
man.
No,
of
you're
course.
fine. You're fine. I'll start easy. What's up with the sizes? I don't want to say the names. I never say the names.
Starbucks had to have its own language.
You should actually run for president and be like, hey, listen, if I become the president, I will change it back to small, medium, and large.
I have no.
I'd vote for you.
I have no involvement with Starbucks, but
Okay.
we created a language in America.
Yeah, but I always just say small, medium, or large.
And they know what you mean.
Right.
Okay.
So
Did
maybe
they get your name right?
most of the time.
And what name do you give? By the way?
I always give my real name, but
Big
they
Cat,
always
Big
yeah,
Cat.
yeah,
Big
big cat.
Cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Employee.
What
Exactly.
is with the
A-Rod
big?
Corp.
Wait, what's with the big cat?
Last name Katz. I'm a bigger guy.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
And you're about to have a son, I understand.
Yes.
So will he be Little Cat?
Yes, he will. Until
Kit
he
Kat?
gets big, and then he will. I don't know what he'll be. Maybe I'll name him Tiger.
Tiger Cat.
Yeah. What about? Oh, I actually thought of this while you're talking about the roasters. You talk about innovation with the roasteries. What if we had a person at the front door who just made fun of you when you walked in the door and roasted you? You said you were into innovation.
Are you in the?
Like you walk in and he just
you in the-
like you're an ugly, and just yells at you, and then boom, you're in the roastery.
I think we will pass on that.
Okay,
But
all right, that's fine. You
I-
can pass on any of these. That's fine.
Alex, what's with
It's
Terrible
your
idea,
miss. It's your
terrible.
miss.
I
Sometimes the tops don't fit and I spill.
yeah, that's a problem.
Okay.
It said,
So you
sorry.
know that's a problem.
We've had that problem. I think it's been fixed, but I apologize for that. Is it
Okay.
spilled on your pants?
Yeah, every now and then.
Really?
Yeah.
Next time it happens, send me a cleaning bill.
Okay, there we go. I actually have something. Don't worry. We'll forego the cleaning bill. the ice in iced coffee, it's not uniform. So sometimes there'll be like a little lukewarm, and then sometimes it'll be too much ice. I need a uniform. I know how much ice I'm getting.
How much ice would you like?
I'd like a good amount of ice where it doesn't, like sometimes at the end you're drinking like this weird, gross, lukewarm, there's no ice left. So
we're going to have to work on the ice.
Okay.
All right.
The straws. Are you going to do paper straws? Or
Starbucks? We're actually doing that now, I believe.
What about metal straws?
People don't like metal straws because they could hurt kids. If the kid
as a future father, I will agree with you there.
Okay.
I don't even know how that works, but that's fine. The big straws are sometimes a little too big. They're like, actually all the time because they're the same size. They're like maybe a half an inch too big.
So we're going to take that back.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, you got that one. Just keep that. What about
Alex? Where's he getting this?
I have no idea.
It's just my brain dump. Literally
Okay,
my brain dump.
okay.
This one kind of doesn't make sense, but it makes a lot of sense. Have you ever thought about serving McDonald's French fries in Starbucks? Take the best thing from McDonald's.
Let me think about that for 1 second.
Serve it in Starbucks.
No.
Never.
Okay. That's a good idea, though. That's a really good idea. Bowls. It's bowl culture. People
Bowls.
are eating things in
Yeah,
bowls.
yeah.
Get ahead of that. And matcha.
Matcha's big.
Get ahead of that.
Yeah.
Get
I like
ahead of
that.
that.
Matcha, that's a big idea. You got one right.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
More Nora Jones in every Starbucks.
You're a big Nora Jones fan?
It just sets the mood.
Okay.
It just feels like a. Yeah. And then my last one is.
What about J-Lo? What do you think about that?
That'd be great too. Maybe go Nora Jones morning, J-Lo afternoon.
When you said chocolate or something in the coffee space, I know Jennifer would love. First of all, she loves Starbucks, but she loves anything with a chocolate flavor. So we may bring one home, girls.
Yes. All right, last one. I have a really good friend whose father collected a bunch of reward points, and then they said they expired. So can I get them back for him?
How many did he have?
I had like 1 million, I think.
1 million.
He was like one of those. He's like a coupon guy, He like really was making sure that he had all the reward points.
I'm not in the company anymore.
Okay, but
sorry.
Maybe we can work something out where we get those reward points.
Give me
back.
his name. I'll send him something.
Yeah, we'll get the reward points back.
Let me save cats here, but awesome question, Howard. First of all, in closing, I want to say thank you very much. Obviously, the Schultz Family Foundation has done incredible work and has been a force for moving homeless families into stable housing. Here's a guy that came from New York City, the projects, didn't get an MBA, huge Yankee fan with his father, and has built a conglomerate with 30,000 stores around the world with great leadership, great purpose, and great core value. Howard Schultz, you are a great role model to my two daughters and to me. And to this guy.
And also, I want to quickly mention, we have a podcast at Barstool that 3 veterans, three people who were in Iraq, Afghanistan, and they partnered with Starbucks, and you guys do great work for veterans. And if you want to explain that real quick, the veteran stuff.
So
it's unbelievable.
We've hired over 20,000 veterans and their spouses at Starbucks. The Family Foundation has now opened 18 transitional training centers on bases. And one of my main concerns is that the VA has a lot of good people, but unfortunately, a lot of post 9/11 veterans that don't feel like they're being treated with the respect that they deserve. And your viewers will be shocked to hear this, that the VA has a national budget of $200 billion. And it's just vitally important that we do everything we can to fix that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the podcast we have with 3 veterans, they've done a lot of stuff with you guys, and it's been fantastic talking to different veterans who work in Starbucks.
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the kind of stuff, and this has been a great podcast. But that kind of stuff, like you said, just from the beginning, making it a mission and making it more than just money, and just fix the straws in my friend's dad's.
Try to do that.
I have a feeling this will be our audience's favorite podcast. So
yeah, I'd agree.
Howard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed
thank
it.
you.
Thanks for being so prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read your Wikipedia back and forth.